Hi.
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 This is New York City to Nata. We're doing an episode on...
10 tips for newbies in Portugal.
Ready?
Yeah.
Number 1, learn some Portuguese.
This is very, very, very important.
A lot of people say you can get by with English, and that may be true, especially in the big cities, but learning some Portuguese has some definite benefits. It will help you communicate a lot easier. It will save you money, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And it will help you better understand what's going on around you.
I've never been in a country where I've tried to speak the language and they've been so nice about it.
The other thing that we should note is that please try to learn European Portuguese. There are quite a few differences in Brazilian Portuguese. Words change, phrases change, pronunciation changes. There's just a lot of differences. So it'll make it a lot easier if you study European Portuguese.
Tip number 2 is to get a Portuguese lawyer and accountant soon, like early when you get here. Even actually before you get here, to take care of some of your paperwork that you need to do.
Yeah, so we got our lawyer about 6 months before we made the move. A lot of people can DIY, and we did DIY a lot of the process, but it definitely helps to have a lawyer on board. Also, getting an accountant early will really help you navigate the process, understand and set expectations. But warning here, it can take a while to find people you drive with who get back to you, and that really takes us to the next point.
Well, I want to finish up on that and say the bureaucracy here in Portugal, you've heard stories about it probably, it is real. So it can take forever to do something simple like exchange your driver's license, which is something that we got help with from one of our lawyers. So yes, bring them on early to help you with those kind of things, because as you're learning the language, it's going to be much easier.
Number 3, there are some real cultural communication differences. As New Yorkers, an email or a text or even pre-scheduling something in an app is the way to communicate, and you know it'll get done. In terms of communication, the default here is really to meet someone in person. Then after that, the next best thing is to communicate by phone call. Then I'd say probably WhatsApp or Messenger through Facebook. And only then maybe text, but really your communication should also be by default in Portuguese first rather than English. Culturally speaking face to face is the easiest and fastest way to get something done. Showing up in person is really the best way to communicate always.
When you start an email, start out with bom dia, boa tarde, senhora, senhor. Start with that, maybe the first sentence in Portuguese, and then you can continue in English. And when it comes to face-to-face, if you have a question for your account manager at the bank, stop in. Go to the bank. If you have a question for immigration, go to the immigration office. If you have a question you're with a car rental or something, stop in at the office. It's just the way it's done here, and it's going to be quicker.
A few other notes. It's a lot more formal here. So greeting someone by senhora or senor is the typical way to do things. I'm kind of used to this as a first-gen baby, but it's definitely a bit more formal, and then you wait to be invited to kind of drop the formality. The last thing I think we'd say about this is, even though we know the rules about how to communicate to make things quicker, as a business owner, you have to put a lot more time into your plans.
Yeah, in the States, if I send an email to a company with a question or something, they get back to me within a couple of hours, and 24 hours at the most. And so, as we're trying to build our business here, we're learning that, yes, we have to really front load time for all the contacts that we need to make, all the responses that we need to get from other businesses so that we can get our business going.
Number 4, make sure you factor in all of the costs. Obviously, we're all doing our budgets and trying to figure out what to do when you're making such a big move. But some of the things that can kind of creep up on you that you don't expect are things like shipping. So there are rules around how soon after you move that you need to make sure that you ship any belongings you have. And if you don't meet that deadline, you get hit with some fees from customs.
And if you're bringing your furry friends over, There's going to be additional cost to just getting them here, just more than just the travel cost. There's licensing costs. There's costs that you have to do in the United States to get your dog registered to be able to come to Europe. When you get here, you have to get a pet passport for your pet. You have to register it again here. You might have to give it shots.
And also buying or renting a car. Cars here are much more expensive than they are in the States. So just make sure that you factor in all of the things that might surprise you or creep in. A lot of this is very well documented, but those were a few of the things that we ran into that we were very aware of, the costs and the timelines.
Speaking of cars, the cars here get, in our experience, they get much better mileage. The cars are smaller, so they don't use as much gas. But when it comes to filling up the tank, it's going to be, I think, a lot more than in the States. And the States is already pretty high. But the costs here for gasoline for your car are high, so you have to take that into account. Tip number 5, restaurants. What can we say? The food here is really great. The food is simpler and it's fresher and it's just so much better for you and it tastes so much better. But when it comes time to go to a restaurant, there's some things you have to remember. First of all, a lot of them are closed on Mondays and Tuesdays. A lot of them are closed from about 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. in the evening. Call and make reservations. And if you're looking to find out if a restaurant is actually open and you've looked on Google and you've looked on TripAdvisor and you've looked everywhere else and you've looked at their Facebook page and it says they're open, call them. Call to confirm they're open.
6, so we talked about food. It's delicious. One of the things that makes it so delicious is the fresh produce. And markets are one of the best things that you can go to save money. But again, one of the things that can definitely help you is knowing Portuguese vocabulary for all of the different produce. Makes it so much easier. It's fresh, it's delicious, and also expect to go to the market a few times a week because the fridges are teeny tiny.
Our refrigerator is so small, it's about half the size of an average American refrigerator. And I keep thinking to myself, there's no way we're going to fit everything into this thing. You shop a couple of times a week, and so you don't load your refrigerator every time you go shopping. You buy what you need for the next couple of days, and that's it. And it works out great, and everything stays fresh.
Number 7. I'm in tech, so I'm ultra impressed by how good a lot of the apps and tech in Portugal are. Hospital apps. You think, okay, what do I need a hospital app for? You can make appointments. You get details and reports from your doctors. The whole process of scheduling is incredibly simple. The whole process of getting your prescriptions, incredibly easy and transparent. So the different apps around healthcare are tremendous. There's also Via Verde if you drive. That's great for tolls and parking and charging your car if you have an EV. The tech for that is fantastic.
Here, when you look at the app, it tells you what the charger looks like. It gives the correct address. It tells you if it's available. It tells you if it's working. It tells you how long ago it was used. It tells you how long it will take to charge your car from whatever percentage you're at to 80% or 100%. Absolutely flawless.
Bank apps are awesome. They include different ways to pay seamlessly, a lot like Venmo, but it just makes things super, super easy. So definitely very impressed with a lot of the tech and apps available in Portugal. So here's another thing that we had to get used to, queues. By that, it's that when you take that little ticket and you wait in line. I think we're all used to that at maybe the deli counter, but deli counter, fish counter, bread counter. But it also extends to everyday things like going to the hospital. You go up to the front desk and you get a number, and it's a very orderly, seamless process on a big screen, and you know when it's your turn. Same applies when you go to a government office or you go to the pharmacy. It's just very straightforward, simple process, but something that you definitely get used to. Tip number 9, housing. It's such a big part of the process when you're thinking about moving to Portugal, but there's one major website that everybody pretty much takes a look at, and it helps you gauge prices and what's available. But I think an insider tip there is really to use a lot of the things that we talked about previously, especially language, because then you can look into groups on Facebook in Portuguese that in your area that give you availability of apartments that are going for rent from maybe a private landlord. Or if you know enough of the language and how to navigate a bit, you could even speak with property managers and get in on a property that's not even listed anywhere because they haven't made it available yet. So there are some different ways to get what you're looking for in terms of housing, but definitely use those tips of language and the right level of communication, and that will help quite a bit. Like so much of the world right now, Portugal is going through a housing crisis. A lot of the desirable neighborhoods, places are facing high demand. When we moved here, we started to hear about things like bidding wars, but we're not in Lisbon or Porto in one of those city centers. So one of the ways you can avoid being part of the impact on that kind of stress to the market is maybe look outside of the major cities. Use the main website as a way to gauge what pricing is, but never reveal your budget up front, especially if you are on one of those Facebook groups, because more likely than not, you're coming with a mindset of what the pricing might be where you came from, and it may not be accurate for the market. And so you're unintentionally driving up the pricing because you're willing to pay more. So those are some things to really be mindful of as you're going through this process and trying to integrate into the community that you've just moved into.
And finally, tip number 10, buy or build. That's the question when it comes to your forever home in Portugal. Are you going to buy or are you going to build? And for each of those options, there's a whole bunch of variables.
So in the States, it's location, 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 and safety. But beyond location, you also really need to think about thermal efficiency ratings because it can be a sunny, beautiful, warm day outside, but a lot of the homes are built to keep the heat out. So they're a lot cooler on the inside, which is great in the summer, but come winter, you really want to make sure that you have really great thermal efficiency ratings. Another thing you really need to consider when you're thinking about buying or building is just the upkeep of the home. There are a lot of older homes in Portugal, so making sure that they're well maintained. And unfortunately, also because so much of the country is right up along the ocean, moisture is a big deal. So
Huge deal, yeah.
looking into making sure that you really take a look at mold and understand how much moisture you're going to get.
Get some dehumidifiers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a huge tip. Get dehumidifiers.
Put vents in your laundry areas. Put vents in your closets because the moisture really gets everywhere here.
So on this question, our answer was build.
Get ready.